Hi everyone, welcome to O Womaniya, a space where we talk about womanhood, motherhood, careers, relationships, and everything in between. Have you ever noticed every love story ends almost exactly the same way? The wedding, the kiss, the girl gets the boy, music plays, the screen fades to black, and happily ever after. The end. But what next? That's the question I found myself asking because life doesn't end it happily ever after. If anything, that's where life truly begins. A few nights ago, after putting my daughter to sleep, my husband and I were watching an old Broadway movie. And once again, it ended exactly the same way. Boy meets the girl, they fall in love, they fight the world, they finally get together, happily ever after. And I smiled because suddenly I realized it wasn't just Bollywood, it was Disney. Fairy tales, romantic novels, even the stories we heard growing up. Different characters, different countries, different languages. But somehow the ending was remarkably similar. The girl found love, and that was the happy ending. And it made me wonder, who decided that? Who wrote the rules of happy endings? Who decided that every woman's story becomes complete only when someone else chooses her? Why wasn't there a story where she chooses herself? Where she stayed single and lived a beautiful life? Where she traveled the world, started a business, lived by the sea, never got married, never had children, or chose it all and still everyone called it a happy ending? Because isn't that happiness too? When we were little girls, we weren't just told stories. We were quietly handed a blueprint. Study hard, find love, get married, have children, and somehow along the way, the message became clear that success looks like this. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my husband. I love my daughter. I genuinely love the life I've built. If I had to choose again, I'd choose it all over again. But here's what I wish someone had told me: marriage is a beautiful choice, motherhood is a beautiful choice. They are not the only beautiful choice. Because if I had chosen differently, I still would have been enough. Think about the stories we're telling today. One of my favorite Disney movies is Frozen. For the first time, the story didn't end because a princess found a prince. It ended because she found herself. Then there was Moana. She didn't cross an ocean looking for romance. She crossed it because she felt called to something bigger. And closer to home, there's Queen. A woman gets her heart broken. She travels alone. She finds confidence, finds joy, finds herself. And guess what? The movie still had a happy ending. Not because any man walked into her life, but because she finally walked into her own. And maybe that's why those stories stayed with us, because they reminded us that there isn't only one way to be a happy woman. Sometimes I wonder, what if Cinderella didn't want a palace? What if she wanted a home filled with books and sunshine? What if Snow White decided, you know what, I'm going to travel the world before I settle down? Would those endings be any less magical, or do they only sound strange because we were never told stories like that? Maybe the problem isn't the fairy tales taught us to dream. It's that they only gave us one dream, one ending, one definition of happiness, one version of success. But life isn't meant to be lived like a checklist. Some women dream of marriages, some don't. Some dream of becoming mothers, some don't. Some dream of boardrooms, some dream of mountains, some want passport full of stamps, some want a quiet home, some want everything, some want something completely different. And every single one of those dreams deserve the same respect. Because happiness isn't found in choosing the right life, it's found in choosing your life. I hope one day when little girls hear bedtime stories, they hear all kinds of ending. Stories where they fall in love, stories where they don't, stories where she becomes a mother, stories where she chooses not to, Stories where she starts a company. Story where she teaches, creates, explores, travels, fails, begins again. And every single one of those stories ends with the exact same sentence. She lived happily ever after. Not because she found someone, but because she found a life that felt truer to her. Maybe we don't need fewer fairy tales, we just need more endings. Because a woman's life isn't successful because she was chosen, it's successful because she got to choose. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. Maybe your sister, a friend, your mother, or maybe a little girl who deserves to grow up believing she has more than one way to write her story. And if you are enjoying these conversations or you have stories to tell us, I am right here. Until next time, be kind to yourself. Take care of the woman within you. This is O Womaniya by Sakshi. See you in the next one.